Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June edition of our Startup Resources series. I want to welcome everyone back who is a series subscriber, as well as welcome those that are new to the series. I'm Lisa Bajornis, Executive Director of our Kentucky Innovation Hubs with KSTC, and we're joined in partnership with our friends at the Cabinet for Economic Development, specifically the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, to bring you this month's series webinar. So again, welcome. I'm really excited about our topic today, but just to give you a rundown of our agenda, especially for those of you that are new, we've got a great guest speaker with us today on a topic of interest that we can never probably know enough about, as we are coaching, advising, and guiding all of our startup clients across Kentucky. And for those of you that are founders and entrepreneurs, we also welcome you for today's agenda, which has a lot of rich content. We are also joined by our friends at Create to give us their hub highlight. And then, of course, I'll close it out with a rundown of some of the upcoming entrepreneurial events around the Kentucky ecosystem. And as always, you are welcome to put your questions for our speaker in the chat. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Just a reminder for everyone that you can certainly go back and find any of our past webinars on our various different topics in the Startup Resources series library. Just go over to the kstc.com website, click on the initiatives item, click on the innovation hubs, and scroll down. You'll see all of our past startup series webinars for the past year by topic, and you can view those recordings for reference whenever you like. And there's lots of other good information there as well. So I am very excited as we bring forward today's guest speaker. We are going to talk about intellectual property, and we've had this topic before. And while I stop share, I'll ask Myron to pull up his slides, and I will continue. But we have had this topic before. We usually come back around to it about once every other year with new and updated information for you. And importantly, in this particular talk that Myron's going to give and share with you, we want to be sure that the messaging is clear to our startup clients, that intellectual property, that which can be protected, that which gives any startup a competitive advantage in the marketplace, creates additional business value for their startup. And so as startup founders are working to attract customers and partners and investment capital, intellectual property is sometimes often overlooked as a driver of business value. And of course, business value being very important to those key stakeholders. So I'm very excited and delighted to have Myron Adams with us. Myron is founder and a registered patent agent with his company, Caviar Creative. And he's going to really kind of explore with us how our startup clients can best leverage patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, and other intellectual property or IP assets to strengthen their competitive advantage. And you all know that we often are approached by founders we're working with specific questions. Do I have something that should or could be protected? When is the right time to go about that particular process? How do I go about that process? How do I know if I am infringing on anyone else, or someone may be infringing on my intellectual property? We get questions like this often. What are the other resources available to help me walk through this? And I want to be sure that all of us have great responses and information, not that we are IP experts, but so that we can do our best as we give service and quality of response to our clients, and we know where to connect and lead them. And as this Startup Resources Series webinar is intended to do, It is to be sure that we are in a good and strong position to connect our startup clients with the right resource at the right time at the right stage for our companies. So Myron, I got to know Myron a couple of years ago. Myron was previously with Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, where he was serving as a licensing and new ventures manager there. And he has certainly worked within the university realm in terms of technology transfer and intellectual property, and now is a wealth of information. So we're excited to have yet another expert resource in our network and to make this introduction to all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Myron, and welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me as well. So yeah, I got to know Lisa and I was really excited for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about how IP can create business value for startups and a little bit more of the practicality behind actually achieving some of that. So my name is Myron. I'm a co-founder of Caviar. I'm also a registered patent agent. I was fortunate to start my career at Caterpillar Incorporated, and I got to see intellectual property on a extremely large scale. And then that's when I joined Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, worked with all the universities here statewide. And then I was concurrently working at a law firm where I still work, and I'm a practicing patent agent. So Caviar, though, was created because we saw that we needed to help transform those early ideas and concepts into protected position and market ready assets. And so some of these concepts over here are going to be covered, but without further ado, as I begin getting into it, I do want to start with the disclaimer that this is not a legal opinion and this is not legal advice. This is a business conversation through the lens of intellectual property. So any actual filing recommendation should be handled by the appropriate person. If somebody did want patent specific items, we could talk about it, but anything else legal, we are not talking about that. We're just trying to talk about ways to recognize value, ask better questions, and make better connections for where the business is going. So I have this broken down into 4 sections, and for each section, I've kind of posed 2 questions to hold on to as we move through the presentation. So I start with identifying the value. Uh, when I'm representing someone, I feel like a lot of the time people are ready to, just run to let's write a patent, but don't necessarily know what it is they really want or are solving. It's very unclear. So starting with those 2 questions can help give more guidance as, the founder continues to move forward. So the right resource starts with the right question. So instead of that, do I need a patent? Maybe instead it's, you know, what decision are you actually going to make with said patent? So I say patent, but it could be any type of IP. So, whether it's, pitching investors, showing a prototype, you're talking to customers, working with contractors, publishing, you want to file, responding to competition, whatever that is, you still have to start with what is the purpose of the IP? And then that other question, what problem are you solving? Those 2 go hand in hand. So once you truly understand what problem you're solving, you can make better decisions because you have more of a path that's laid before you. So one of the biggest things I feel like I see is that a lot of founders or inventors, innovators, what have you, they struggle for the language. So I know we've seen stuff like this a thousand times, excuse me. It really does hold true. So, but even it's just not technical advantage. So I hear like it's cheaper. Well, that's great that it's cheaper, but that's not enough. There's usually an actual problem that's solved, and that's the patentable feature. I've had, so I just feel like that's the most. I'm sure we've all have again met people, work with an innovator who is just very positive that like nobody does this, but I think it's kind of breaking that down. So you have these categories. So if it's a product feature, you can kind of target what type of IP, because as I'll show in a bit, there's actually strategy you can do with more than just solely patents. So common assumptions, I would say these are the assumptions that can create bad timing. So like I said, if it's innovative, nobody can copy it. That's not true. And that's kind of the point of the patent, right? It's to exclude others. I can wait to launch. Also, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I've heard people say that, and then I've seen them turn around in a very short period of time and find something that's extremely similar to theirs. But now that one's public, and now you have this entire mess that you're dealing with. At least as far as me, as a practicing patent agent, that I'm dealing with to try to rectify that. A provisional means I'm fully covered. It does not. So I'd touch on that further, but provisional just it basically is your ticket. You got a ticket and you're just waiting, but that time is something that can be leveraged if done correctly. AI can give me instructions. That is a big one. It can help. It can help, but there is so much nuance in here that ultimately you just need to send them to somebody who's a professional if there's actually action coming. IP only matters for large companies. Very, very, very false. And I haven't seen it, so it must be new and patentable. That is another big one where, as much as nice as that would be, that's not the case. You got to go through patent examination, at least if it is a patent. So intellectual property is a bridge. This is kind of how the mental framework that I use, which is you have what the founder built. That's kind of the starting point. And then figuring out how it creates that business value is kind of what it's going to help the company do. So that's how you're going to take those stairs. So maybe you have a device that was made for a super large company and you decide that you want to try to license it to that super large company, or you're going to write a patent so that super large company can't solve the problem that you did. These are all types of strategies that you can use that will actually help you get to some type of obtainable goal, as opposed to just filing a patent for the sake of filing it. So moving to the next section, connecting it to a next move. So the two things to consider for this part are what conversation is actually coming next and what should not be shared. So this is kind of a big one because everybody asks about timing. So timing I touch on in this. And before you do anything, you have to consider, who are you sharing it with? What are you actually sharing? Are you sharing the nuts and bolts, or are you just kind of showing them something? Who owns it? Do you actually even own it? Did somebody else do? What do your contracts say? Is anything confidential? Is technical detail necessary? Is anything documented? And do you need legal? And I think those are kind of all of the questions that should really be answered before you're ready to go and basically make some type of public disclosure. You want to really have that plan in place before that, or at least have talked to someone to get a strategy before that. So using prototype stage as starting point for IP work. So this is a very common thing I see. Um, at this point, you need to know, excuse me, what is new? What field is this actually entering? So as you're moving closer and closer towards the, all right, we're going to do this, these are questions that should be able to definitively be answered. What similar technology already exists? So if the only difference between your product and someone else's product is the fact that yours is cheaper, now you have to build brand presence. That's a lot heavier of a load than just going back to the drawing board and working more. Who contributed to the build? As I suggested earlier, that's, you may have somebody who helped you develop, let's say it's some platform or some software. Or do they have rights? Is this now joint? How is that going to work? That also can come back around to bite people in the butt. What should stay private? So just because you are wanting to work with someone or you're starting to do something, not everything needs to be disclosed. I think when you're talking to your legal professional, at least for me as a patent agent, if someone's talking to me, I need all the details so we can together strategize around this. But I think it also depends on what scale of, I guess, a firm, because if you're going to a very expensive firm, maybe that's not necessarily a realistic, option. But there are firms that you can just have that conversation for pretty low cost. And then whether a landscape search makes more sense before deeper investigation. You can also get patent landscape or just kind of like technical field landscapes where you basically request what is out there, where does my product fall? And I've seen them come from organizations, I've seen them come from law firms, but that's another tool that people use to kind of make a smaller investment before making that larger patent investment. So, how customer discovery can inform intellectual property. I feel like customer discovery is something a lot of coaches use, including myself. And when doing that customer discovery, you actually can use some of the information you find out to further refine that IP strategy. So, if it's an existing workaround, that's something you can find out where you can say, okay, they are doing the long way to do this. We need to try to figure out how to make from A to B quicker. And that's a pathway to intellectual property. Competing solutions, talking to your customers, you find out, all right, what all do they have? Implementation hurdles. If that's, we tried to implement X, but it didn't work because that now becomes an area for that could be targeted. Strategy from customer conversation. So sometimes, and this has happened to me, you could enter to talk about one type of transaction, but in the midst of that conversation, you leave with something completely different. And so then it just becomes, all right, well, that's more strategy. Or you get something like, we would really like to have. So all of those just become different segues for additional strategy. Buying triggers, hearing that, what would be something that would be low hanging fruit potentially from an organization. Customer language. How are you communicating this problem versus however who you're talking to? If you are not talking the same language as your customer, that in itself is a problem. And then identifying current pain points as well. So within that, you do want to avoid, typically, you want to avoid giving away the actual technical mechanism. So maybe they see what it is, but they don't get a look under the hood. Any type of full, you don't want to just hand it away, especially if you're dealing with a large organization. There is nothing that could stop a large organization from just saying, okay, well, we'll take those ideas and we'll just tweak them and make them our own. Confidential process details, again, trade secrets, don't not giving everything. Unpublished product secrets or the source of the advantage. So it's really about learning the pain while protecting the actual mechanism behind it. So I know we've seen this 1,000 times. I'm not going to go through all this, but this is just for reference. So typically, you have the trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. And for this, I'm just kind of referring to patents as a utility patent. I'm kind of assuming everybody has some type of baseline knowledge. And so with patents, that's the one that you typically may hear about licensing, but you can actually license with other types of IP, including trademarks, for instance. So here's kind of the breakdown of that. So a common thing I hear is that a lot of these type of intellectual property, having it, building a portfolio, is for big companies, and that is not true. So 36.2 small businesses, 99.9 of them are United States businesses, and 45.9% have, excuse me, of the US employees are at those businesses. So in small businesses, patent licensing revenue is 2.5 billion. So there are definitely people doing it. And even considering those who don't truly understand how to build a portfolio or how to build business strategy behind whatever they're doing, that's also just money left on the table. So it's not necessarily to guarantee the revenue, but it's to create options when it connects to some strategy. So this is a case study, not based in Kentucky, but it's relevant in that this applies to the more rural located organizations. Pennsylvania Wilds is a super, super rural location, like 200 acres in Pennsylvania, but they've basically have used a trademark where all of the people who are small rural business owners have come together, and they've created essentially this consortium that they use their logo for essentially market trust. So it's a place-based brand. They have like brand standards, licensing. They put that together. They have all these retailers set, excuse me, they for their sales, visibility, trust, all built in one. And ultimately, it's to reinvest into the region. So it also allows them to be, they are able to approach those government funding opportunities as well. So search and plan before spending. So for this section, I want to touch on where do we stand and what exists already. So I think finding out where you stand, it comes from preparation. And I think that's using the searches strategically to determine where you stand. So you really want to find out the similar technology already exists. What I see is if sometimes maybe what you originally want your patent to be, if you find some other things, you can target a specific aspect and you can use that for whatever your intellectual property strategy can be. So it's not, the end all. If you find something, it just means it requires more strategy. How does the field describe the problem? So again, do you really understand the problem of your field? If everybody else is talking about something involving human anatomy, but you're talking about something or excuse me, in an organ inside of the body, and you're talking about skin, maybe you're not really talking about the same thing. Maybe you found something new. And I think that's kind of what you want to figure out, where are the competitors position? That's what that's going to tell you. Is the founder's feature truly different? I think sometimes you have people who say this is different and it might not be. And it's okay because sometimes telling somebody that it might not be sends them to the drawing board and they come up with something that is different. Um, so what language may matter and does more development need to happen before legal support? So these searches, just to find this out before going to legal support can save you money because sometimes it's, oh, hey, I've already done my search. I don't want you to do a search. I just want this. And you just hand it over. Maybe it's just a review now that you have to charge for. So it just gives you those options. So this is what I touched on earlier briefly, leveraging provisional applications. So a provisional application, it can support that early filing date, but they don't actually get examined. So like you get the patent pending status, but I still get a lot of people who think like, oh, I got a patent this patent. Like again, it's just like it's just your ticket. You have 1 year to come back and actually file a non-provisional to be examined. So within that, the leverage really comes from what is disclosed in that provisional though. Was that provisional? Did they file that with claims? Um, what is the actual next move for that? Why did you file a provisional? Just to say you filed it, or did you file it because you're going to an investor? Did you file it because you've identified a potential partner and you want to protect that idea before going to talk to them? So there's different types of scenarios where you kind of want to prepare for it. What needs to happen before the end of the 12 months? So that is one, you need to file a non-provisional before the end of the 12 months. And two, again, ideally there was some type of strategy. So whatever you did try to accomplish or whatever you did want to, take a bite at the apple at, you were able to accomplish in that period. And are you treating it like a strategy or a placeholder? Because again, they're expensive. So you don't want to just throw money to the wind with actually no plan in place without actually understanding what you've asked whoever is representing you for. Spending and planning in the wrong order can be a very expensive mistake. Um, so if your first cost question is what is the cheapest and easiest way to do this, maybe you should not get one yet. Because once you actually have the strategy, it makes sense. So better questions would be, why do we want to file? And what are you looking to accomplish with those rights? A patent is the right to exclude others. What are you looking to actually do with it? Because if you're able to figure out what you want to do, that cost is immediately justified. And that's kind of the logic behind it. So you don't want to just file on any type of, or typically, I wouldn't just file on anything. You want to file on something that has some type of strategy. So AI can help founders prepare. I very much so think that is true. It can help you organize your thoughts, brainstorm search terms, summarize non confidential concepts, and prepare questions for an expert. But it does not replace judgment. It cannot make a patentability determination. It will not just give you the filing strategy. It won't just give you, you shouldn't rely on it likely for confidential decisions. And it cannot replace those legal and expert advice. So do not paste your sensitive information in a tool you don't understand, in short. Okay, and this is my last section here, and this is investor referral and readiness. So what will make the founder easier to trust? That's really the question that you're trying to answer. And so this is kind of just a snapshot of it, right? This would be an investor perspective. What is proprietary? Can you explain what is different than others? Who owns it? Has anything been publicly disclosed? What is actually protectable and why is it valuable? And that kind of ties back to the underlying strategy. And what is the next IP step? Excuse me. Is there any legal risk tied to the core IP asset? If there's issues with ownership, that may look less appealing to an investor. If you don't really know why you got the patent, if you don't really know, what would make whatever you have claimed strong, then is that really a strong core asset? So they don't expect perfection, but they do expect clarity, and you should be able to identify that. So knowing when the question is changed. So likely they need to talk to a professional when they need a formal IP strategy, patent and landscape searches, provisional or non-provisional decision making, public disclosure risks, investor IP preparation, unclear ownership, invention documentation, or licensing or other IP pathways for monetization. So again, you can leverage some of these to actually make money through larger companies. And lastly, this is also where our company comes in. So again, we're Caviar. So, in a nutshell, we have IP strategy, patent and landscape searches, disclosure and pitch readiness, investor IP prep, referral clarity. So we really just try to help, anyone who is a small to medium sized business actually have a shot at developing that patent portfolio. And we have in-house legal and marketing to kind of help frame whatever that actual decision making would be from those experts. And so with that is everything I have.
All
So
right.
thank you all.
Thank you, Myron, so much. That was a lot of very valuable information just to have in our repertoire as we're working with founders who are innovators, who are developing new technologies, solving big problems in large markets, and certainly have asked us and will continue to ask us some of these questions. So again, I'll remind everybody, if you have any general questions, not something specific perhaps to a specific founder or your specific company to ask Myron, please drop them in the chat. And as you know, we will certainly provide a copy of this presentation as we follow up and email all the attendees at the conclusion of today's webinar, and we'll have this information located and stored in our library on the KSTC site. So, Myron, what I especially appreciated is that you've given us a very nice kind of guideline in terms of working with our founder and startup clients to determine what is their intellectual property strategy, how to go about building that, which we can certainly assist them with. but really understanding the why behind what they have learned and what differentiates them. And then certainly some of the other considerations that we would be in a good position to share with any of our clients. So appreciate that you've given us this type of guidance and a little glimpse into the various services that Caviar provides, and especially that you have such a deep expertise working with early stage companies. So that is always very helpful to have. And we're happy to make those referrals as we need to. So I am not seeing any specific, oh, here's one. Curious to know how you structure charging for services.
So for charging, we have just like a free 15 to 30-minute call just to kind of figure out what's going on. What do you typically, I feel like that's where it always starts anyway, with what do you really need? And then from there, it's just kind of broken down based on what they would want. But, and I can send over a one pager as well. But
Great,
yeah, it just kind of depends on what they would need.
good. But nice to know there's that 20 to 30 minute kind of preliminary consultative call up front just to get the your arms around what it is that the founder is interested in engaging in and understanding. Good. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Myron? And if not, we'll go ahead and move on with our program. Myron, thank you so much for joining us today. We especially appreciate your expertise.
Thank you again for having me.
Yep. Thank you. All right. And with that, we're going to hop over to the next item on our agenda. We do have our monthly Innovation Hub highlight, and I'm very pleased to share with you that we will be hearing from our friends down at Create in the Bowling Green region, so covering 12 counties there in the south central area of the state. And we are joined by our very short timer, as I've been calling him. Buddy Steen is program director with Create and has been part of the Kentucky entrepreneurial ecosystem longer than anybody I know. A very long time, decades. So many, many contributions to Kentucky's entrepreneurial landscape over the years, and certainly all of his expertise shared with particularly founders in the Bowling Green region. And so, Buddy, we know that your last day with us is June 30th, and then you are off to new chapters, new activities as you kind of move into semi-retirement, but knowing that you'll still be creating, developing, innovating, and investing. So we love that. So I will stop sharing so that you've got, excellent, there's your slides. And we're looking forward to hearing what's the latest and greatest in the Create region. Thanks for
Thanks,
joining.
Lisa. Yeah, can you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, moving over to the private sector, so I can actually experience the ecosystem, right, on the private side that we've built. We're real excited about Bowling Green, excited about the future of things. Let me see if I can get my screen to go. There we go. So a long time ago, I was asked what economic development, what the definition was, and that actually took me back for a minute. I want to just go over this with you because we've actually adopted this by the Bowling Green 2050 Economic Development Group, if I could spell adopted there. But anyway, this is the proactive economic development, we think, are proactive organized actions taken by the local folks, right? Leveraging the regional, state, and federal stakeholders, just like the state programs, any federal programs. You have to do that. And you want to improve the community. And we focus on trying to recruit, grow, and retain strong companies. Clearly, that's the objective. We want to create jobs. We want to create rewarding jobs, and we want to retain talent. And that's really the key nowadays, right? Talent comes first. Improving incomes, we're not afraid to do that. We're not afraid to say that. And for sure, we want to create wealth generation. That's how it kind of turns. Jeremy Jacobs, as you guys know, he went through, started up startup companies, sold them, started new ones, right? And that creates, a healthy ecosystem as that money turns like that. And then something we added, what are we trying to do? We're really trying to increase the overall economic standard of living in the community, but let's not forget the cultural standard of living. That's sometimes that we leave that out accidentally because it's just not apparent. But in order to get talented people to live in your community and work here, you really have to have a certain cultural standard of living to support them. And so that's important. Tech-based economic development, same thing as general. It's just it's more important to have the talent, and of course the funding. The funding will follow the talent if you have it. So ecosystem development, we're right in the middle of things. They invited me to be on the 2050 PG 2050 Economic Development Group. Doug Gorman took a lead role. He's our judge executive here. We get a lot of invites to things like this, and very happy to be a part of that. And hopefully I can still do that on the private sector side. And we've got some really good staff coming in too, so we're excited about that. We had a Regional Angels 2026, Lisa. You were urging us quite a bit on this, and we really appreciate that and your help. We brought together some of our local angels, and Lisa was there, Marilyn was there. We gave them some state information. Mostly judge executive drove the invite list there. This was a create event. This was our event, but we let the entrepreneurs sort of lead it. And that's kind of the trick, is to really get them bought in. And so Jeremy Jacobs spoke. Our Judge Gorman is actually an entrepreneur too, and acts like it. And they spoke, as well as the state folks. And we had a really good meeting, and that's just the first of many. We're gonna keep building those relationships with those local folks, tie them into some of the Nashville folks, and try to build an ecosystem that with entrepreneurs that can support these folks. We created something called Bucks for Bright Ideas many years ago. It was a great marketing ploy, created a fantastic funnel. We renamed that and relaunched it this year, called Launch Kentucky. And essentially, we're going out to all 12 counties. We're promoting the idea that people can invent things, people can do things innovative. Myron, appreciate your presentation with the IP, because we have a lot of discussions with folks at this level about, IP. Is it patentable? Do you have the freedom to operate, right? This fellow, Dr. Kevin Maudlin, he won this year. He is an AI, very advanced AI prediction engine that he's built. And we're very happy that his software company is moving forward. And so he's also a tenant here. He's a client here. And we're proud of Dr. Maudlin for that. We also had the 2026 Small Business Person of the Year actually start their company here, right, in Bowling Green. John Harnage, Kentucky Thermal Institute. He's a serial entrepreneur. If you ever meet him, you can feel the entrepreneurism just kind of oozing through his entire office area. And so we're really glad to have him and proud of him for Kentucky. We had a small business summit last fall, and it was our biggest one yet. And again, it was entrepreneur-led. We had Jeremy Jacobs speak, Tyler Jury speak. These are entrepreneurs, tried and true. And we had lots of talks and lightning sessions, breakout sessions, and we'll continue to do that. We invite everybody in the fall to come here for that. In the future, I'd love and so proud that Kelly Wright will be our new programs director here at Create. She is fantastic entrepreneur. She's made payroll. She's the perfect, really, person in that she's an entrepreneur. She's also a software engineer, and she's a proven mentor. She helps people. She's been helping for months and months with folks. And so we're really glad to have her come and take my position here. And I just appreciate, Lisa, everything that you guys have done, the state. I'll be behind you, supporting what you do, and look forward to it. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, buddy. We appreciate that. We're very excited for all of the, I guess, fresh momentum that we're seeing within our Create region. And we're certainly very excited to welcome Kelly as she steps into some big shoes to fill, but I know she's up for that challenge. and we know that you're going to be close by. So again, buddy,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for all of your support, your services, your dedication, your passion for this work. It is not for
Thanks.
the faint of heart, that's for sure.
Thank you, Lisa. Take
Yes,
care.
my
Okay.
pleasure.
Bye.
All right. And then just to wrap us up, there we go. You can certainly are welcome to take a screenshot of this if you'd like. We've got a number of upcoming events as we move into the summer months. Create will have their Build Smart Innovation Toolbox later today at the Innovation Campus. All this week, Sprocket is holding their Vibe Fest. So that is Monday through Friday, 5 days of vibing all day at Sprocket. Blue North is having their member town hall at Spark House later this week. And next week on the 23rd, Amplify will host their Welcome to the Ecosystem for a number of their ecosystem service providers that serve entrepreneurship in the Amplify region. The next 5 Across Pitch competition hosted by Awesome Inc. is June 24th, next week on Wednesday at 5, and this one will be at the UK Gatton College of Business. Again, Create will have another Startup Garden event next week on Thursday, the 25th. SOAR is hosting their Founders Playbook Bootcamp next week on Thursday. It'll be virtual. The July edition of Amplify's Venture Connectors will be a social meetup. They're hosting that on July 15th at 9 Golf. And then this particular series, our Startup Resources series, will be hosted next month, July 21st at 11, and it is virtual for all of you. And then the following week on the 29th, you can hear from all 6 of our innovation hubs as they give their end of fiscal year 26 Innovation Hub updates for the full year and the results that they've achieved. That'll be 10 a.m. on the 29th, also virtual. And then don't miss out on Blue North's Open Pitch Night, Thursday, July 30th. That'll be at 5 at Spark House. That's what's going on around the state ecosystem. We're so glad that you joined us today. Thank you, and hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.